In this training video, I'll be going over the changes to the Chronic Conditions HPI template. This template will appear as a Chronic Conditions button in the Reason for Visit panel. So I'm going to click on Chronic Conditions, and it will open up a brand new template that would allow me to add some overall chronic conditions comments or updates, or even just a general history of present illness. Today, for the patient, I have the opportunity to add a new problem. So this add problem button would pull up the SNOMED search window, and I can search for a new problem there. I can also use the problem IT plus to pull in a new problem by searching for a new problem and adding it to my problem list. But if I just want to address any current problems in the patient's chart, that list of problems will appear in this left-hand problem description panel. I can document on an individual problem by selecting that problem from the left-hand panel. And you'll notice it brought forward the problem description. If this problem hasn't already been mapped, it will pull up my SNOMED menu to map the ICD code. So I'm going to select this first option, and you'll notice that now pulled in an ICD description. This field is editable, so if I wanted to change how this appears on the patient's plan, I can make this an easier to understand diagnosis code for a patient. So maybe this would be suitable for what I want to appear. It will not change the problem description in a chart, but this is a free text field. Further to the right, I'm able to update the assessment status. So I've changed that to chronic. And now I'm in this notes field in the upper left-hand corner. What I would see, it would default to the most recent note. So if this patient had a problem note, regardless of who authored it, that's what would appear in this field. If there were multiple notes, I could filter this by the most recent note I've authored or just the most recent note. I could also view all notes, which would bring up a pop-up grid that would show me a history of the problem notes. I could access problem note my phrases or add new. But in this case, I will just add a new problem note. You have the ability here to promote your problem note into the patient's HPI for this chronic condition. So this HPI section, I will use this arrow and it will move the problem note to this field. At any point, if this were a really lengthy problem note and I only wanted some of that information to be present on the HPI comment, I could edit. Once I've moved this over, I could add additional edits. I can also document my patient details, and this field will carry forward into your assessment and plan template or documentation. But I could also, if I wanted to only work from this screen, I can add patient details. I could access any currently built my phrases, my common phrases link, which is a preset list, or I could add new my phrases here. Same applies with the provider details. I can add new provider details or access my phrases or common phrases. Once I've completed documentation for this problem, I would use add and update, and it's just giving me an alert that I've changed this ICD description, and clicking yes will just override the previous description. So you'll now see that assessment with my pre-texted description has pulled forward, and this is how it will appear on the patient plan. I can access another problem over on the left. Let's see. And again, what you'll probably notice is using this problem, there's no need for mapping, so it just pulls forward the ICD description in the code, and I can complete the same documentation. If there were notes, I would be seeing the most recent, or I can add a new note. I can promote that note to HPI or not, and I can just type a new HPI comments. I can add a my phrase and provider details my phrase. I don't have any, so I'll just pull in a, and then I would use add and update. I will update one more. Let's see. So you'll notice with this one, there isn't a, and that I clicked out of it too soon, but it was an alert telling me there isn't a suitable SNOMED mapping code for this ICD code. So I can still document on this problem, but what it's telling me is it won't have a SNOMED code attached to it. So I'm actually going to clear this one out. And I will work on the anxiety. So I'm going to map that assessment to a problem. I can free text this description. I can update my status again. I can add a new problem note. I'll promote that to my HPI. I'll add a new my phrase, and I'll just add one of these common phrases for the provider details and add an update. And again, it's just telling me that I free texted that ICD description. So if at this point I had completed all of my documentation, I can save and close from this template. And I'm actually going to close my SOAP and then go back in so you can see how that looks. So what you'll see if you've addressed multiple problems from that chronic conditions template, or even if you only addressed one, what will pull forward in your reason for visit is a chronic conditions reason. And the HPI comment in this field will simply redirect you to see the chronic conditions HPI. If you've saved anything in the chronic conditions HPI, you will see the red flag that they've been addressed today. If I wanted just within the chart to see what those HPI comments were or see the updated problem notes, I would need to look in today's assessment to see those notes. If I just to show you what this looks like, if I wanted to review my master document, so I'm just previewing a master document. And you'll notice those different notes I've put in, that documentation does carry forward in my assessment and plan, and also in my history of present illness. So the way it will appear, your chronic conditions will show as a standalone reason for visit. If the patient had other, acute reasons for coming in that you also addressed with them, those other acute reasons would show as separate HPIs with the appropriate comments included. But those chronic conditions addressed will have a separate grid that will show you the specific chronic conditions you address, and it will pull forward the assessment status, so the problem status, along with any HPI comments added. So I'll get out of there, and then I'm going to close the chronic conditions template, because what I also want to show you is how this looks on the patient's plan. You'll also, as that's running, see my list of documentation in the assessment and plan panel. So what the patient will see, again, if the only thing I addressed today were chronic conditions, that would be the reason for visit. If there were acute issues, those would also appear. They would see the full assessment and plan table, and then their problem list would continue forward, or patient list, patient plan, sorry, would appear as it currently does. Excuse me. And one other issue that I'd like you to just take note of in the chronic conditions template. So once, and I'll use this low back pain problem. So I'm going to map this to a SNOMED code. So this is a problem that has a current node. What you will notice is if you've authored the most recent problem note, you will be able to edit that problem node in this field. If you were not the author of the most recent problem node, this will not allow you to edit the note. It's an issue we've brought up, and we've asked for some type of option here to make this the most recent node in a problem node editable regardless of who authored the original. But what you will be able to do is access IMO to edit the problem node regardless of who authored, or I could take this node and move it over to my HPI field. At that point, I would be able to change to the problem node. At the same time, I could use it as my HPI node. At that point, I can select whatever changes I've made. I would have to go to the problem node and change this field to most recent note by current user, so that would be me. At that point, I would be able to paste in a new note. So again, if I was not the author of the problem note that's currently pulling forward in the chronic conditions template, I would have to promote that note to the HPI field in order to edit. Which I can then copy, change this to the most recent note by myself, then I can paste it in. If the note is simple enough that you'd rather just type a new note, you are not necessarily needing then to move the note over to the HPI note to make changes. Or you may want to, if you know you didn't author the prior note, you may want to simply go into IMO first before using this template and make those notes updates. And I'll show you how that can be much simpler. So I will just add and update this problem. And I'm going to go into IMO. So again, if it's a note that I did not create, I may just want to come into IMO to my Problems tab, click on the problem to open the modification window. And while I did author this, if for some reason I didn't, I would still have the opportunity to click on the note and easily make new changes here and save. So that gets you out of having to do so much of a workaround in the chronic conditions template. And I will save and then save and close. And now what you would see is that new node that I edited in IMO pulls forward into my problem node. So those are all of the chronic conditions template options, along with the current problem nodes issues within the template.